All right, welcome again to this month's Alliance Roundtable, where today we're going to be sharing how CEOs are using AI agents to improve business performance in our own businesses. AI agents, if you haven't noticed, is really the newest thing we all need to understand. And basically, we started this series, this monthly roundtable to bring CEOs together to help us all learn faster and keep up with the latest applications for AI in our businesses. And so far, the results since we started, the number of CEOs here that are using AI has increased 10% from 70% to 77% are actually starting to use it. Some, deeply into their operations. Results are still the number of results that are, or CEOs that are communicating good or great results is only increased from 50% to 51%. It's a small sample size, but just gives you an idea of where people are at. This is a learning process of a major transformation in our entire ecosystem. So anyway, we hope by just coming together regularly and sharing what's changing, what we're learning together, we're going to accelerate our learning process and make better decisions as a result. So let's get rolling to the meat. Joining me today is our moderator, Matthew Swanson, managing partner of the Silicon Valley Group. And we've invited Ted Elliott, longtime member of the Alliance, the CEO of Capado. Capado is a platform that allows companies to manage and release customized Salesforce instances in the cloud. And Ted's going to be sharing how his company used AI agents and really has driven down costs. So with that, Matthew, it's all yours.
Thank you, Paul. And I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to kick things off with some slides to cover this topic. This is our fifth installment in the series. And when we started out, the whole point is we all knew that AI was going to have a big impact in our lives. But the story is unfolding every day. And the newest topic is around AI agents. If you're anywhere in the proximity of Silicon Valley, this is all anyone talks about anymore. And today we're going to uncover why that's the case. So it is to set the premise. November of 2022, a lot of people got caught off guard with ChatGPT, and opened their eyes that there's this new tool on the horizon. But fast forward 18 months, and the biggest change is we all talk about AI now, and we're all waiting to see how is this really going to add material value. And so this is where AI agents have emerged as a layer on top of what we've seen to date of the large language models, of the ChatGPTs of the world, to allow for more end-to-end automation. And this is what's getting people really excited, because it really does bring a form factor that makes AI useful to a lot of business leaders. We're right at the early stages, but it is happening right now. And so, we expect in the next year's time to see another ChatGPT-like moment that involve agents, where people see a use case and it really reinvigorates their priority of adopting in their business. So we want to get ahead of that. And so the next couple of sessions here, we're going to cover AI agents. Today, we're going to start with what is an agent, and a little primer run, comparing that to what we've all heard of, large language models. So what's the difference? How do they work together? One way to look at this is AI agents can do a lot of things for us. They can solve marketing tasks, sales tasks, HR, across the board. But in any use case you look at, they all have common components. So let's look at that. If you look at an AI agent, they all have a concept of memory, where they go and they access facts about the world. They also all have this notion of planning, where they can take a task, break it down into smaller tasks, and then figure out the right way of sequencing things. Similarly, they have access to tools. Just like we use tools to get things done, agents use tools. And so they might have tools to go fetch data from the internet or from a database. And then ultimately, they're doing all this to take an action. And those actions are usually something like talking to a customer or an employee or even another agent. And so what makes this different or a improvement upon LLMs is each one of these components uses large language models to do these actions, to do these behaviors more naturally, more human-like than in previous versions of technology. So we're going to get into what that means by looking at how we got here and why LLM, large language model-based agents, bring a whole new set of use cases to business leaders. We're gonna look at this through, if anyone's familiar with the L5 framework from self-driving technologies. You know, at the bottom at L0, it's you driving a car, right? Manually, there's no assistance. And L5 is the AI is doing everything for you. It's in any type of environment. And we're seeing something like that play out here with agents. So we can look at it from L0, the starting point would be something like Web 1.0, right? Technology is everywhere, but there's still a lot of tasks today that are very manual. And so if we consider a marketing use case like generating leads for a marketing campaign, something we've all done, we can look at it from an L0 perspective, and from those agent components, you know, the actions would be someone, an employee, probably manually going to the internet to find data. Similarly, that employee is manually planning their steps on how they're going to do their task. There's really no AI tools to be considered here, and we can consider a spreadsheet to be memory, where data gets stored. Moving one level up to rules-based SaaS, this is where a lot of companies are today. They're using tools like Salesforce or HubSpot to set up very fixed rules-based systems that can be considered to be like an agent. So back to the marketing use case of generating leads. If you're using a tool like Salesforce, the actions might be, importing leads through LinkedIn using a very technical interface. There are planning tools that Salesforce and the like provide. So, Process Builder allows you to set up in a GUI a fixed set of steps to maybe filter those leads into a closer fit to what you're looking for. There's no real AI to speak of here, and ultimately data gets stored in a database. Once we go one level higher, this is right where some companies were, a really small fraction of companies were, right before ChatGPT came out. And they were using predictive analytics, traditional machine learning, to start to automate some of those rules. So, in the generating leads use case, instead of setting up a step-by-step rules planning system, some companies were using machine learning to create lookalike audiences, where the machine learning, the AI, automatically finds patterns of similar people, right? And it would truncate some of that step. So, again, in this step, it's still very technical. The actions that the agent takes are interfacing with an API to go get data. There might be a tool like Zapier to orchestrate the planning of different APIs. Companies like Salesforce have tools like Einstein, which are an attempt to bring machine learning to business users with mixed results. It's really hard. What people have found, it's really hard to tweak a machine learning model with an interface. And so most companies ended up building their own custom machine learning to do this. And then finally, to get the value here for your agent, for your L2 agent, a lot of companies, you need a ton of data and holistic data about your customer. And so people use data warehousing tools like Databricks. So this sets the stage to where we are right now, which is this next step in automation, level 3. And this is where we start to see large language models taking over some of these components. So in that same case of generating leads for marketing, instead of setting up all these rules and these very specific flows, we can start to train AI agents using natural language on how to use tools like Multion, a tool, is very new. It's blowing up because it allows people to start using natural language to go fetch data from the internet. And so if we put this in the context of the rest of the components, we have actions like using these new tools in plain English to go do tasks that would normally be hard coded. We have planning tools like Llama Index and LangGraph, which allow for, again, natural language to dictate what the agent should do. You can start coaching agents using language instead of code. They all use LLMs. That's what makes these powerful, and a paradigm shift. And then finally, a topic we won't do justice to today, but the way to get this level of autonomy requires a new way of storing data, in what's known as a vector database, where the short version is we can start to store data based off of similarity in language rather than just pure numbers. And so they all come together to allow for a more humanized version of tasks. We can start to talk to agents just like we would talk to employees, and it opens up a whole new field of use cases. So that's where we're going to leave it today. There are two more levels, L4 and L5. At the top level, you can imagine agents coaching agents on how to do tasks. And maybe a year ago, people would have said that's 10 years from now. Now, at least here in the Valley, people are predicting that's happening in the next 2 to 3. So things are moving a lot faster. But L3 is here right now. And we're going to expect to see a lot more of these use cases take fold over the coming months. So we want to get started here. And we're lucky to have Ted Elliott to share his story of using different forms of AI in his business, Capado, going through rules-based to traditional machine learning to now where Capado has these agent-like tools that employees can interface with plain English. So excited to hear Ted's journey. Ted, to kick things off, please give us a little bit of background on your journey with Capado, and how you got here today.
May I ask one question first, Matt?
Sure.
Do you see companies going like level 1, level 2, and then level 3, or do you see companies going, oh, I'm just going to go straight to level 3?
So that's a whole nother topic we're going to get into in a future session. There's an opportunity to leapfrog.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and please add your questions to the chats. We'll try to save some time at the end. Ted, please share your background.
Hi, so my name is Ted Elliott. I'm from Capado. A little background on Capado. We have about 1,100 customers, 55,000 users. We help people do Salesforce deployments successfully. We started looking at AI about 2 years ago when we acquired a company in Finland that did robotic testing or autonomous testing. Hopefully you can see my screen. I don't know what it's showing right now.
We can.
And so we decided at the beginning of this year that we were going to do an initiative called AI First. And AI First meant you have to use AI if you can, but if it doesn't actually help you, you shouldn't use AI. And we started adopting AI across the board, and we built our own GPT and our own LLM. And then we said, if we can build it for ourselves, we can probably build it for our customers. And we've gotten some really great efficiency from using it ourselves. So, just to give you an idea, I'll just pop ahead here. We decided to start using it in our support, and our cost of handling the support issue was about $61 per case. We've dropped that down to about $33 a case by simply enforcing the AI as the single source of truth for all customer support issues. And what we've eventually been able to do is make it so the customers go to the agent before they get to a human. Now, it has some adverse effects, like all the cases we now get are so freaking complicated that you have to hire engineers instead of support people to solve those cases. But that's a good problem. We've also used it in our development process, and I'll show you an example in just a second, to actually code. And I'd say we're at level 4 already. We didn't cover level 4, so I won't go into that. I'll just show it. But having machines talk to machines is coming to a theater near you soon. I was at a speech that Sam Altman gave on Sunday to a small group of people where he talked about prediction as intelligence, and this idea of collecting all your data and collecting data sets to be able to work off of, especially if you have a workforce of people who work from home. In our case, we have over 400 employees who all work from home. Giving them an AI agent on our business is like giving them cliff notes for how the business is supposed to run. So when they have a question about how they're supposed to do something or how they're supposed to do their job, it's a real benefit. For my assistant, Grace, we created something called Grace GPT that has my LinkedIn profile, my V2 mom, and the business plan for the year. And whenever she makes a decision on my behalf, she has to consult Grace GPT to see if Grace GPT would agree with her. And the quality of her decisions have gone through the roof, and her effectiveness as an assistant has skyrocketed. And the one example that I wanted to talk about, even though I'm going off script a little, that's just what I do, is how could you come off of this meeting with one thing you could do that would benefit you? And I start recommending that you start transcribing every meeting you have with your staff and every call you have with anyone that will let you record the call. And that prior to having meetings, you have people send you their decks so that you can run it through the AI to ask it what's important, what questions should I be asking, how can I make this meeting more valuable? Because I think from that, you can get a tremendous efficiency gain as a leader. Now, we've gotten these efficiencies that we can measure across our support teams, our development teams. It's harder to measure the efficiencies you get as a leadership team, but the ability to actually listen to what your team is saying and the ability to process that data and read it in written word is extremely powerful. I was going to show you quickly an example of what we're doing internally, and hopefully this will show up on the screen okay, but we're basically building agents that let's see, can you guys see this? Is it coming across?
It is coming. We can see the video play. Yep.
So, sorry, is there some guys there probably gonna last through the day. Everybody. Hello. Okay.
You got it muted.
Okay. Sorry, someone was talking there, threw me off. So what we're going to show you here is what the future is. So here's a human being who has to build some software, and they're talking to an agent that is a business analyst that's been trained just to do business analysis work. And that business analyst is taking the information that they're gathering from the human, and they're building an artifact over here in the scratch pad on the right-hand side. And that scratch pad is collecting data that's then being passed to the next agent, who's a technical architect. And this, by the way, this use case could be used across the board, not just for software development. But the technical architect is now taking the business analysis work and actually writing the technical architecture documentation. So imagine this process for an Accenture or Deloitte or Capgemini to gather the requirements and write them up as technical requirements. We're talking about something that would take a week, 2 weeks at $600 an hour. That's now being completed in about 65 to 75 seconds. If you take a transcript from a call to get the business requirements and you upload those business requirements in the system, your solution architecture and your business analysis gets even better. Once you've written that solution architecture, we now have a developer agent that's waking up that's now coding what the solution architect has just asked for. Okay. And we're using this currently to write Python, HTML, Apex. Sorry, I think my machine decided to take a little dirt nap right there. So let me see if I can fast forward to that. But basically, the agent is talking to the next agent and kicking off a process, right? Now, we've been able to train the robots to not only code, but then to review their own code and go back and say, how do we perfect the code? How do we score higher on how the code is written? How do we do a better job? We have been using agents to do autonomous test writing, because if any of you are writing software, writing Selenium test scripts, no one wants to do it. It's a horrible exercise. The machine can write its own test scripts based on looking at its own code. And for some reason, the streaming has decided to pause here. But I think you're getting the core idea, which is agents talking to agents. And we've got the agents going as far as writing the training material and creating the sales enablement and writing the sales documentation. And that's what's kind of truly remarkable about these agents talking to each other. And this is not 2 years away. This is not 3 years away. This is about 4 months from being generally available to Accenture, Capgemini, Deloitte, some of our different customers, because they came back and said where they're getting things really wrong is actually up here in the business analysis of the technical architecture, because they're not actually listening to what the requirements are at a finite enough level to get it right. And if we can help them in developing the requirements, then everything else will, come a lot easier. And again, I'm sorry, we tested this a couple of times before we started the call, and as it will always happen, the video always decides to not cooperate with you, right? That's just how it goes.
Well, Ted, the video actually came through really well. And I think there are a couple of points, because there's a lot there of what you just covered. And if we were to just kind of, contextualize it for folks on the call. So you have a technical use case, but you're interfacing with non-technical people, right? And I think that's that's a really big point here to kind of dive into, which is, what I observed from that video is someone was using a plain English command to ask the agent to do something. Then the agent was also using plain English to interface back, and maybe just help us understand kind of like how would we apply that to everyday use cases, right? So yeah,
Let's say that, let's say you
marketing,
have
sales.
sure. Let's say you have a sales operation process for handling a lead, and you have someone who is the virtual SDR, and the virtual SDR hands it off to the virtual sales analysis, and the virtual sales analyst hands it off to the virtual marketer, and the virtual marketer kicks off an AI agent that calls the customer who filled out the lead to schedule the first call. And once that call is scheduled, that call then preps meeting notes for the parties that participated in the meeting. And when those meeting notes are captured, it then sends the sales rep a strategy for how to close the deal in 45 days. And each of those steps could be set up as automated or start-stop processes, but it's part of a workflow. So if you know the workflow in your business for how you complete a process, whether you're a biotech company or you're a manufacturing company, but you know your processes, and you start thinking about where would robots who know how I want to run my business, who know the history of my business, because really the concept that what Altman kept on referring to as prediction is intelligence. You get prediction taking all of your past successes and loading them into the model. And then the model says, okay, I predict this is the outcome you would want, or I predict this is what someone would want to hear from you, or I predict this is what has worked for you, in the past. And so, I mean, that's really what you're kind of driving here. For example, let's say you wanted to score a lead. Now it's going to stop working the minute I start showing this to you, but here it's like going through the code and it's actually scoring how good the code is. Imagine you wanted to score your lead. Imagine you want to have a follow-up process once you score that lead that is some other process, in this case, writing tests, where you want
So
to go back.
let's pause right there. I think that's a really relatable use case of just even scoring, right? Because how would you do that in the past, right? You probably have some sort of keywords you would check for, or maybe compare of what you would have done previously with machine learning or rules, and how you can score in plain English now with the tools you're using.
Yeah, so let's say that you took every opportunity you won in Salesforce and whatever criteria you had for winning those deals, and you loaded all the winning deals into the LLM and all the losing deals into the LLM. And then you wrote a document that says, here's how we do business at our company. You could then ask questions of the LLM, or you could train a robot to work with that data to execute upon those learnings. I think the important point here, Matt, though, is you have to have the system built to support humans, not humans built to support the system. So what is it you need to get your sales reps to do better? Or what is it you want your marketers to do more consistently? Or what do you want your developers to do more consistently? You have to take your past successes and your past failures and train the machine so that it can give coaching, in essence, to the human to do a more effective job, and also put the human in a position to make the yes, no, stop decisions. Yes, this looks good. No, it doesn't look good. Wait, stop the entire process. Skynet is out of control. And in fact, Eric Schmidt had talked a lot the previous weekend at the thing I was at about when the machines start talking to each other and we can't understand them, you need to be really close to the power plug so you can pull it off. So why I'm bringing this up is you guys as CEOs need to be very careful that you don't just let your staff rely on the AI to answer everything and not think. There has to be a methodology in whatever you're doing that always has the human making the judgment call of do we proceed or not proceed? Because if you let the machines run amok, you're going to get some crazy answers and it's going to affect your credibility.
So,
Right.
so let's double click on that, because it's such an important topic, and we only have a minute here to cover it. But how should we think? So in the past, when we have these tech tools in place, we could set up very specific thresholds or guardrails. Only do this action if this other thing happens. It was deterministic. But now, what you're illustrating here is you use plain English to ask the agent to do something, but you have less certainty on what it's going to respond with. How do you think about that evaluation? How to protect the end result?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I'm talking to the president of MD Anderson, and I was talking to him about patient care and the fact that when you get these messages about your pathology report, or you get your messages about your blood work, it's almost unintelligible for you to understand. And I said, well, we can't trust the AI to read those results and translate them into business English or kind of common English for us. But what if when the pathologist submits their report, the system spits back, is this what you're saying? And if the pathologist says that looks good, what if you sent that message along with the pathology report to the patient? Could you improve patient care so they actually understand what's wrong with them or what the actual scope of the problem is in a manner that doesn't have them waiting for 3 days, wondering if they have a tumor in their brain or if they're going to make it? And so I think you have to define in all your work processes, where is the role of the person in making the qualitative decision as to what to communicate. I think there's also another layer to this. We've been talking about it being in English and natural language, but our belief is that people who are in India probably think in Hindi, and people who are in Helsinki probably think in Finnish, and people in Spain probably think in Spanish. And I think where you're going to see this going next is people being able to communicate in their language to the system, and the system communicating to their partners who may not speak that same language in their language. And you're going to see that our ability to understand each other is going to skyrocket. And that doesn't mean we're going to agree with each other or have the same values or the same cultures, but have you guys ever been on a call with a team overseas where they say yes to everything and they have no idea what you're talking about? I know it's never happened. But I've had it with my Spanish team that thinks they speak English, my Finnish team that thinks they speak English, and my Indian team that thinks they speak English. And it turns out they all speak English, just their dialect, which is ununderstandable by the other three. And so this ability to have written word, have communication we can understand, but always have a human reading it. I mean, this puts the burden on you to actually read and listen. That's the funny thing about it. The burden is now on you to actually see if what you said makes any sense and to make sure that it represents what you want to say. So a common thing I'm doing in almost all my meetings is going around and saying, hey, is this what we actually said? Do you agree to this? So someone was pitching me something the other day, and I was like, geez, I'm not sure if we want that. And so I created this document that had a summary of everyone on the call. It had the red flags on the call, and it had the action items, right? And it was by me just building in the model these 3 prompts. And I get this document every time I finish a call from my assistant that has, because we haven't programmed the robot to write the prompts yet, but we're going to. And I sent it to the vendor, and they said, oh, I think this is really unfair. Now, do you guys see that? The vendor is currently in my document. And I can actually send a note to the vendor right now and say, hey, is this what you actually said? Are we on the same page? Are we not on the same page? And so I think again, and the vendor, of course, immediately stepped back and said, oh, that's not what I meant, or that's not what we're really saying, or that's not what we're guaranteeing about our product. But putting it in the written word and then forcing people to respond to the written word is a very powerful management tool for all of us as leaders. And it also holds us accountable, right? There's nothing like putting your V2 mom into your AI model and saying, am I changing direction on the company? Because I don't know if any of you have ever been accused of changing your mind by your team, or they're not sure what you said, or they're trying to do what they thought you wanted. Wouldn't it be better if it was in writing and you're like, well, what I wanted is in writing. What has changed?
Ted, what I really like about it is you're relating it to how we do work today. We talk to each other. Employees can't be expected to just operate independently. They have to communicate. We all do. And that's what this technology is leading toward, is tools that we also have to talk to. We can't just leave it by itself. But if we do start to incorporate these agents into our workforces, everyone can be more productive, and that's where we're heading. And that's all we can cover today. This is big subjects. We're going to be picking it up again next month. Thank you so much, Ted, for sharing your insights. We're just about to head into the breakout rooms where we're going to explore AI agent use cases. We're going to workshop it together. So Paul, hand it back to you.
Thanks, Matt.